been having a bit of a lively discussion on disc golf course review, the forums, and I wanted to address some of the issues we've been talking about. I'm going to put a link to the site here in the video so that people can check it out. It's a really great site for talking about anything having to do with disc golf and checking out your local courses. We've been talking about forehand technique. There had already been a discussion going on previously, and I posted a video earlier this week, so some people have commented on that, and the discussion's continued. So I wanted to address a few things in the discussion and clarify a few things from the video, since they may not have been clear. A lot of the discussion has centered around the idea of forearm supination versus pronation. That's this motion. Supination is when your hand, your palm ends up facing up towards the ceiling, and pronation has to do with when your palm starts facing down that direction. Okay, so people have discussed whether or not when you throw the disc, whether you should be pronating your forearm as you come through, or whether you should be staying supinated. I think we both, everyone kind of agrees in the end. I think we're saying it differently. I think the idea is you need to stay supinated through impact and then follow through with some slight pronation. The reason a lot of people say to try to keep your palm up towards the sky as you throw the disc is a lot of beginners, when they do it, they roll their wrist. When people say roll their wrist, they mean pronate. People early pronate and they change the angle and plane of the disc. And so, first of all, you get this wobble because you haven't kept the disc on a single plane through the motion, and you end up oftentimes throwing an anhyzer because you've tipped the outside of the disc up as you're rolling the wrist. You end up throwing an accidental anhyzer or roller. So when a lot of people are learning to throw forehand, they're often taught keep your palm up so that you can keep that disc all in one plane and one motion as you're throwing. That's the point I was trying to make. People have brought up the idea that, well, if you look at the end of the motion, is your hand in supination or pronation? A lot of people are off over here. In fact, Side 122 even posted a picture of the way I threw it. I released, you couldn't quite see my hand as I was releasing, but I believe I was probably in some supination. As I'm following through, I end up in a little bit of pronation. Question two is this pronation or is this shoulder into rotation? Right? I'm starting with external rotation of the shoulder. It's not only supination here, but it's external rotation of the shoulder. And as I'm following through, my shoulder is internally rotating. Naturally, internal rotation will look like pronation. I can get to here, it looks like I'm pronated, but look at all that pronation I have. I haven't actually really pronated too much to my wrist. The reason people bring it up is there have been some studies that seem to indicate that pronating your wrist in other sports can protect your ulnar collateral ligament. That's that ligament here in the elbow. Is what people have Tommy John surgery on. And the point is, ultimately, they think that pronation, as you're throwing a ball, will engage your pronator teres, one of the muscles that comes in that area, and protects the ulnar collateral ligament. So there's been some discussion. Some people feel that pronation causes acceleration, increased speed with pitching. There's a lot of disparity in people who teach pitching, whether that's true or whether that's something you consciously actually teach people. That's kind of besides the point. Well, for our purposes, I think in the end, no, I'm not trying to say your forearm shouldn't be allowed to pronate at the end. My point is just don't pronate too early and end up rolling your wrist before you've gotten to impact. If you're really worried about your ulnar collateral ligament when you're throwing the disc, first of all, you probably have to be throwing quite a few forehands at full power to really put an excessive strain on your UCL. But if you're concerned about it, you want to look into a few things. First of all, you want to make sure you have enough shoulder external rotation. Studies definitely show that not having sufficient external rotation of the shoulder when you're throwing ends up putting more of a strain on your elbow because you're trying to compensate with motion elsewhere rather than naturally having to the shoulder, and you definitely need lots of external rotation to load that disc before you throw. Forehand, I think that's one corollary between pitching and throwing the disc. If you look at the reason they're pronating is different. You can't necessarily make that correlation for throwing a ball that's round and you're okay with spin going in different directions than a disc that you're not okay with turning in different directions. Same thing with tennis and forehand. People have been bringing up tennis. Tennis is a very different swing. There are some similarities in that you're trying to get your elbow in front first to get that power of the lag between your elbow and your hand. That's definitely the case. You want to end up getting that elbow almost maybe a little in front of your hip as you're accelerating through. But you do not want the pronation. The reason they're pronating in tennis is they're looking for topspin as they're coming over the ball. They're brushing up and they're getting that topspin. Watch Rafael Nadal when he hits a forehand. He's getting lots of coming over here like that to exaggerate the topspin. You don't want topspin in disc golf. If you start pronating there and do topspin, you don't want your disc to spin end over end. We're trying to keep it all in one plane. So it's a different goal when it comes to disc golf. I think when it comes down to it, disc golf is pretty simple with forehand and backhand with the basic principles. All you're trying to do is see how much force can I put, how fast can I accelerate the disc, and can I keep it in one plane. All right. If I start pronating too early, I don't keep it in that one plane. I have to maintain at least a neutral, if not supinated hand until I'm releasing it, and then I'm allowed to let my wrist pronate. I definitely don't disagree with that. If you're also worried about the UCL, I meant to say this earlier, is strengthen the pronator teres. We can talk about some specific exercises in the future. You may just want to simply take some weight and work on, hold a hammer, right? So you hold a hammer at the very end of its handle and rotate back and forth with a 90-degree angle bent elbow so that you're strengthening those muscles to at least begin strengthening of the pronator teres group. I think that really addresses a lot of the issues we've been talking about. I actually think most of us are agreeing. We're just saying it in different ways. Rather simple exercise here. You're rotating your wrist back and forth, keeping your elbow at a 90-degree angle. That way you're supinating and pronating through the forearm and not inducing shoulder motion. You just want to go back and forth. You can modify how heavy the hammer is, or if you have any other object that has a weight at the end would work just as well as a hammer. One last clarification of some of the ideas, things you can look at when protecting the ulnar collateral ligament, the UCL in the elbow. Strengthening the pronator teres, those pronator muscles, is what's going to help add extra stability to that joint. Making sure you have enough shoulder external rotation, the ability of the arm to rotate out, having sufficient motion there is really important. And playing around with your grip. If you don't want to put as much strain, maybe don't have your grip as much laterally like that, but maybe the pads of your fingers on the disc, on the rim of the disc instead. Thanks for joining us today.